Tim, how you doing, buddy?
Good, Eric. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me. What an impressive place, man.
Oh, thank you. Just happy that you're here, man.
Yeah, I knew the shop would be impressive, but like I said before, I didn't. Yeah, it's even better than I thought it would be. Pretty impressive, man.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just gave you a quick tour right when you got here about the installations of the Cortina compound, like so many people call it.
Yeah.
And I'm just happy the way it's going, man.
Yeah.
We'll see where it takes us. Just never know.
Looks like you're just starting to scratch the surface of maybe its full potential.
Hopefully, we'll see. You never know, right? Just got to keep pushing.
Right.
But anyway, again, thank you for being here. Well, national champion. What was that like? Like, tell me.
Well, I think probably anybody else can relate. That's one of those. There's probably just a bunch of different emotions you experience at once. The first one is you feel lucky, surprised, and fortunate. Probably all in one. Mm-hmm. I think if that tournament had had another match, the lead probably would have changed several more times. And I think even during the last match of that tournament, the lead probably changed 3 or 4 times. So it just ended up, when the match ended, I had the high score. So
Oftentimes it's like musical chairs, ain't it?
Oh yeah.
It's you just never know what kind of condition you're going to be dealt with, because we all have our own ammunition of conditions that we're really good at, some that we're okay at, and some that we just absolutely don't know, right? So every time there's a match, like another match, another 20 shots that you have to shoot, you just never know what's going to show up, right?
That's true. Yeah. I think that's a good point you just brought up. Like, everybody has a strength for a certain condition or type of match format, or just like with ranges, some might be very good at Raton, and others might be really good at Bayou, and some might be very good at Rattlesnake or Coalinga or Delaware, or on and on and on. And yeah, everybody has their strengths, for sure.
Right. So that's kind of, I guess, what you were saying about that's why the leadership or the leaderboard changes so often during a match, because it's
yeah,
it's what, and people that don't know F-class don't realize that, yeah, we have a long time to shoot, but also in that the wind changes multiple times in that window. And if you start shooting the wrong condition, obviously you don't know that it's the wrong condition until you're deep in it. And it's hard to abort because you don't know what's coming, right?
Right.
Something just sit there and bleed. And it's hard because let's say you're shooting a left-hand condition. How do you manage that? If you get, number one, how do you pick the condition to shoot in? And number two, if you started on the wrong condition, how do you abort, or how do you kind of re-engage? How do you manage that?
So you're asking me, that wasn't a rhetorical
No,
question.
it was. I'm asking you. I'm asking the national champion.
Oh, how do you pick the right condition, and then how do you abort out of it?
If you happen to pick the wrong one,
right?
How do you go from there?
Those are very good questions. Yeah, I think this. I would use the word strategy with this. I guess I've learned the hard way to try to set expectations prior to the conduct of the match. And it's really about matching your abilities versus the conditions. I would not recommend looking at the scoreboard or the leaderboard to find out, I need to shoot a 199 in order to regain the lead. I wouldn't look at it that way at all. I would look at the conditions that have been prevalent throughout the day, at the range if it's the second or third match. And I would try to set an expectation for what it is that you feel like you need to shoot, or what you can shoot. And then that should set the foundation for the rest of your strategy in terms of how to approach it. You know, there'll be some times where I'll look at it and say, you know, a 192 with 6 or 7 X's here will probably win the match, just because of the violent nature of the condition, or how it's switching, or how big the value is. And so if you can score better than that, great. And if you don't, well, then your strategy or expectation was flawed there. So I think the first question is, how do you decide what condition to shoot in? I think at first it starts with setting some type of expectation up front. In terms of, and then relying on your experience at that range and other ranges, in terms of, you know, deciding when to get in it and when to get out of it. As far as when to set the brakes, you know, again, I think that goes back to the original expectation that you set for yourself for that match. Let's say you said, okay, a 197 with 8 is what I need to shoot. Well, if your first 7 shots in, you've already dropped 2 9s and you only have 1 X, then you probably need to change that, because the back 15 shots of that string, or 13 shots of that string, you're already behind the power curve. So I know Lenny Bassam talks about process instead of performance, but in this case, I think you have to look at your performance, because it's driving some of your process too. So I still believe in the process ahead of performance, but in terms of those specific questions, that's how I'd answer those, about when to get in and when to get out.
So let's say you're 7 shots in, you're down 2 points in 1X. Even though, would you at that point just stop and try to find a better condition that could possibly get you the performance that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, in that case, I guess if you're looking for that 197 with 7 or 8 X's, you're going to need to change something. I mean, continuing on that current vector, I guess, you know, if you've dropped 2 points and you're 7 in, then I guess that sets you up for a 194. Mm-hmm. And if you told yourself prior to the match, no, I've looked at the conditions, I know my ability, I know my gun, I should be able to shoot this 190 with a 197, 7 or 8, then you're not meeting your full potential. You know, don't settle for that, is what I would say. You know,
I see. So,
well, what do you think about that?
Good.
Yeah.
You're the national champion here.
Oh, okay.
No, well, obviously it works for you, right? But I guess, you know, playing a little bit of devil's advocate here, if you are somebody who's, if you're dropping 2 points in 7 shots, you're obviously struggling, right? And that's kind of the question. How do you turn that boat and say, you know what, I'm just going to cut my losses here, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to jump in a totally different condition, right? Because you would have to change something drastically, right?
Right.
How do you go about doing, how do you go about going, I'm going to stop? Do you stop and evaluate the conditions now? And because when you jumped in, you had picked a condition that you were going to shoot in, right? So let's just say left to right, wind. And you're like, this is mine, I'm going to jump in. And you jump in. You're 7 shots in now, you're down 2 points. Now you have to abort and say, I'm going to have to shoot in something that I haven't shot in, which could potentially be worse than what you're doing.
Sure. That's
what I'm saying. How do you weigh that? How do you make that decision to say, okay, this is not working. I'm just gonna chance it, because that's technically what you're doing.
Yeah. I mean, some of this is conscious, and then some of it should probably be subconscious too. Not to sound all spiritual or new age, you know, but like Lenny Bassam talks about in his book, you know, we perform best when the conscious mind gets out of the way and we trust our instincts and we shoot instinctively. logically, to get yourself there, maybe something I've said to myself is, oh, well, I've already shot 2 sighters for score in my first 7 for record. What do you have to lose by waiting, stopping, and shooting another sighter for score? I mean, right now I'm using, say I was chasing the spotter in that first 7 shots, and I can't even properly value the next shot based off where the last shot went. That might be a way you can convince yourself consciously, hey, set the brake and reevaluate, and then try to go back into a condition that you feel comfortable or confident in, you know?
Fair enough. What if you change and it still doesn't work?
Yeah. Well, I have an order of list of things, and the first one at the top is to blame the gunsmith. That's generally the first one. We can
Yeah, well,
blame Omar.
doesn't help me because I'm doing my own stuff. So. But yeah, let's all blame Omar.
Right. Okay. We blame Omar. Let's see. So the question is, what happens if that doesn't work?
Right, because you stopped and you said, I'm bleeding too much, I'm going to try something different. And then you try something different. And then what makes you stop that train, right? Because you hop on a different train. What makes you jump off of that one and say, well, turns out the other train I was on was better?
Yeah. I don't know how to answer that question directly. I guess I'd try to just look holistically at the whole range. I mean, we only have so many indicators of the conditions. And we have the obvious ones with the flags, the mirage, the dust off the impact berm, and our competitors' targets. So I think holistically, you can probably look at those 4 things. I remember as a newer shooter, overhearing other experienced shooters in the pits say, man, I got lost. But when so-and-so started shooting, I figured it was a good time to start shooting. So maybe that's something mechanical that you could set yourself up with a teammate or somebody that you respect and admire, and hold high as far as a shooter, and go, okay, I'm obviously not seeing it today. I'm going to, but I trust that guy's judgment and decision making. He wouldn't be shooting in this unless it was a good condition to shoot in. Mm-hmm. That might be something that I would look at there. I don't know if that directly answers your question, though.
It does, but what happens when you're the guy in the lead, like yourself? You're waiting for us to shoot, but we're waiting for you to shoot.
Yeah,
and nobody shoots.
Well, you're not gonna be in the lead long using those strategies, I don't think. Yeah.
Well, you know, it was just
yeah,
because a lot of shooters find themselves in that situation.
Right.
They don't know whether the biggest thing is they don't know when to stop. That is something I see very often. They're afraid to stop, and sometimes that's the best thing you can do.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe one way to look at the string is it's 3 matches of 7 shots. That's not quite perfect public math there, but if you broke it down into that, maybe that's another way to look at it. So even a 2-sider 20-shot match, you're going to get 2 sighters, and then I set a goal for myself. Well, I probably, based off the condition, I probably should be able to be clean using the momentum of those sighters through 5, 7, 9 shots, whatever, 10 shots, maybe 20. I don't know. It just depends on the condition. But then if it gets outside those parameters in terms of a risk threshold that you set for your expectations for that match, if you continue to shoot in those bigger risk conditions, I mean, you're going to shoot 9s, So maybe look at it as 3 7-shot matches. And if a newer shooter was to use the momentum of those first 2 sighters and get clean through 7 on, and then it got weird and he stops, let's say he buys in with another 9. He's clean through his next 6 shots, but then he buys in with a 10 on his last sighter for record. He could shoot a 199 with 10 or 11, potentially,
Right.
Versus trying to just drive through the bumpy section of the road. And what do you think about that?
No, I mean,
Break it down into
That works too, right? It's, for example, I have exit markers, right? Like, it doesn't matter how confident I am, because sometimes you're confident and you're like, oh, that was just a leaker 9. It's fine. Just keep going, right? 2 9s in a row, I stop. Doesn't matter how confident I feel. Just because obviously you should not hit 2 9s in a row, right?
Right.
And oftentimes, you hit a 9 and you're like, oh, that was real close. I'll get it on this one. And then you shoot again and you're like, okay, this other time I got it. How many times have we done that, right?
Right.
So 2 9s in a row is like hit the brakes and then reevaluate. But again, you have to, at least for myself, I had to establish those key exit areas that are just set in stone. Doesn't matter what it looks like. Just if you hit that, you stop.
I think there was something you told me early on, 3 or 4 years ago, and it took me a while to get it, but you were like, we're on the phone, and you're like, Tim, what do you score if you hit the center of the 9 ring? I'm like, well, you hit a 9. He's like, no, Tim, the center of the 9 ring, the center. And I'm like, oh, X, And so I think that has real value. When you have to jump in for that cider for score, if you center up a 9, it'll have a good outcome.
Right. Well, a lot of people are afraid to shoot 9s, but sometimes you need to be comfortable shooting a 9, right? Especially if you're jumping in on a tough condition.
Right.
And like yourself said, if you have a budget, if your budget allows for a 9, well, then shoot for a 9. Just like when we shoot for 10s, a lot of times we hit the 10 in the center. Well, same thing's going to happen when you're shooting 9s, or you shoot for a 9. I'm just going to jump in here with a 9. What the 9 makes you do is automatically gives you an extra ring. It forces you to move an extra ring over. And how many times have you shot and are half a ring behind?
Right.
Most of the time. So when you shoot for 9s, you're automatically going to grab an extra ring, and sometimes that's all you need.
Yep.
And either way, it gives you a 9 to hit. The 9 is a very big target.
Yep.
Unless you're not shooting for it.
That's the fascinating part of the specific, F class, especially the F Open, because the equipment is so good now, and the competitors are so solid. There's the mental aspect to the game and strategy is a much bigger piece than I had initially even thought it was. It's such a, that part's really fun, I think. So
it is. So how do you prepare? Well, just how did you get here? This may be a pretty deep question. Like, how did you get here? How do you become a national champion? How long have you been shooting?
Speedy built that first rifle. I picked it up April 8th, I think, April 8th, 2018.
18. So
Yeah.
4 years, you became a national champion.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you get there as fast as you did?
Well, I picked a good mentor. I did 99.9% of what he said to do. Of course, I had to put my own thing on it and set myself back. To be honest, Eric, man, I don't really feel qualified to be speaking as the national champion. Dude, there's so many good shooters and so many good competitors. This guy's with so much more depth and accomplishment than I have. And I'm not trying to do ho-hum, woe is me, kind of bashful, shy, humble pie thing. Man, I think a lot of it was luck and opportunity. But yeah, as far as how I got here, very similar path, I think, to other folks. I grew up in Nebraska. We were, we lived on a farm, a rural kind of upbringing. Had 22s, deer hunted. I joined the military. I did some hunting while I was in the military. I got interested in long-range hunting and was fascinated by the exterior ballistics part of it, specifically out west. And let's see, I retired from the military, and I had a little more time to pursue the long-range shooting thing. So I bought a Ruger precision rifle in 6.5 Creedmoor. And I went out to Bayou. I shot a mid-range match with Randy Littleton. Mm-hmm. He was very kind, very, very much a professional. I remember that as my first match. And that's when I was like, man, I need to build one of these F-class rifles. At the time, Don Diffie and Johnny Ingram were the heavy hitters at Bayou, and they shot SOMs with 195s. So I remember overhearing that at the match. So I went to Accurate Shooter, and then I found you, Eric, and I knew just enough. I was just smart enough to know how dumb I was. So I knew I needed to pick a mentor and, for him to guide me. And luckily enough, I think you took me on, and the rest just kind of worked out.
So I don't even remember how you found me. Like, do you remember the first time you called me? I don't even know how that happened.
Yeah, well, I PM'd you on Accurate Shooter, and then you gave me, we exchanged phone numbers, and then I think I texted as a good time to call, and then you gave me about an hour and over an hour first phone call on the phone, and kind of talked me through, the initial pitfalls that a lot of newer shooters do, and you gave me a blueprint. And I took good notes in terms of, hey, these are the action, Borden, these would be the stocks, this would be the barrel, this would be the gunsmiths that I would use, this would be the front rest, the rear bag. This is, initially get the equipment and the build going was kind of the initial consult. And then once I got that, was trying to learn about reloading along the way. And, so that's initially how it got started, I think.
Okay.
So
who built your first, you said Speedy built your first rifle?
Speedy did. Yes, he did. Yeah.
What, if I remember vaguely, I don't remember that I'm the one that told you what to build, because I remember all of a sudden Johnny, you know Johnny pretty well. I know Johnny pretty well.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't, so this is when, 2018?
Yeah, it would have been the end of 17, beginning of 18 when I got that rifle well built, and then I got it in April.
Oh, okay. So I was on my okay, that's when I was doing pretty good at Bayou.
Yeah. Yeah, TSRA, you had a pretty good streak there.
Yeah, so so you reach out to me, I tell you what to build, and the first, as I told you, I talked to a lot of people, just trying to help as many people as I can.
Right.
And the first time that I really remember your name was Johnny, because you had won a club match or a club championship.
Yeah, the first match I showed up with that gun, it shot at the time, the scores are getting ridiculous now, but I mean, it shot a 5.99, and it was clean through 59 shots. Ray Weaver, I think, was the scorer that day. And, it shot 5.99.31, won the club match about a week after I got the rifle.
You dropped the last shot?
Yeah, last shot. Yep. But I didn't care at the time. I just thought that was the best I've ever shot ever in my life. I'm like, wow, this is awesome. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah. Lucky.
No. Well, so that's the first thing, or the first I remember of you, that Johnny saying, yeah, man, this Tim guy, he just won. And I'm like, who is that? And
right.
Unbeknownst to me, I'd been talking to you on the phone, but, I didn't make the connection.
Sure,
right?
sure.
But that's kind of when I first started to hear about you. So now you have this F-Open build, right?
Yep.
And so now you go and shoot a 5.99, which, by the way, a perfect score is 600, which at the time had only been done twice. You've actually done it ever since. Since then, you shot your 600. But what was it like to all of a sudden be the guy being chased?
Well, I didn't feel like I was the guy being chased. And just to be sure that I'm correct, there was a mid-range club championship. I shot the 5.99.31. About 2 weeks later, they had the long-range club championship. And there wasn't a great turnout at that championship. I believe there was another competing match that other folks were at. But still, I think I shot 580 or 570 in that one. It was kind of windy, but I ended up winning that one too.
Okay.
So after I won those first two club championships at Bayou, I knew I had been fortunate and lucky, and but I knew that there was some element of success in this recipe that Eric Cortina turned me on to, in terms of the speeds and the nodes and the barrel and the action and just the process to the whole thing. And then I'm like, okay, this is going to become my fallback. I've advanced this far. Now I'm going to try some stuff. And if I don't get that figured out, I can always come back to here.
Right.
It's my new blueprint, if you will. And yeah, the guys at Bayou were very helpful to me. They were helpful more in some ways than others. Like one way they were very helpful was crushing my grapes, at like every match, just because there's so many good shooters there. So
if you shoot Bayou, you're gonna get your grapes crushed a lot.
Yeah, So you learn to like the taste of humble pie, but that serves to fuel work ethic and drive and all that, to try to learn and to try to do better. And then they were very helpful. I would ask questions and they would try this, or this is what I do, or this is what I don't do. Or I'd I realized I didn't even know how to clean a rifle. So I look back on my NRA scores, and about 400 rounds into that barrel, I was lost. I had to drop almost a grain of powder. The seating depth wasn't working out, and I didn't understand. And then Omar and Doug both told me, hey, man, you probably need to learn how to clean your barrel, And that was before the test-long bore scope and all those things. And sure enough, they showed me that looked like a barbecue grill in there. So, yeah.
So you picked me as your mentor, and I took you under my wing. What would you recommend to somebody that they find a mentor that can, what would be the key points that you would give somebody who's looking for a mentor? How do they need to approach and maintain a relationship? Because first you have to establish a relationship, but then you also have to maintain that relationship.
Yeah. I think you'll find, the first thing I would obviously look for somebody that's performing at a high level, and you can tell if someone's, receptive or open to it. And oftentimes you just go up and ask somebody. But before I even asked them, I would have my mind right in terms of what it means to be a mentoree versus what it is you're looking to get out of the mentor. The mentor is going to have all the answers. You just need to be ready to learn them. I kind of took down these notes, and I know I've kind of run this by you, but I would look at it as your progression as a shooter is kind of like 3 phases. The first phase, it's kind of like launching a rocket to the moon. The first phase, you need to escape Earth's gravity. You need to get out of your own way. Because you just don't know what you don't know. And that's all of us, myself included, still to this day. We're always learning, right? But especially as a newer shooter, there's just so many things, pitfalls that'll keep you from learning, that the mentor can help you bypass a lot of that pain, a lot of the expense, a lot of the energy. So as a mentoree, that first phase, you need to look to that mentor to just help you get out of your own way. And I would literally copy paste everything that he says to do in terms of, down to the thousandths on free bores and seating depths and chamberings and barrel lengths and actions and all that stuff. The gunsmith, the rest, the rear bag, spotting scopes, all that. And the reason for it is because, it's kind of like putting a rifle together. If you asked someone to bed a rifle and then ask this person to chamber the rifle and then ask this other person to install the trigger or ask this one to do some fire control work on it, it's that rifle, you don't know where to go if it doesn't shoot at the end of it. It'd probably be just best to have one guy do all that. Well, why treat the mentor any different? Give him the discretion to just give you the whole thing. And until you're giving him a run for his money, until you're matching him on performance, that's probably where you need to stay and learn that. you know. Just my opinion, though, you know.
It worked. It's working.
Yeah. You know, then once you can, once you're at your same level of performance as your mentor, some people will stay there. Some competitors will stay there. I think to progress to the next phase is, you know, you call it phase 2. You probably need to go back. I would recommend going back and proving all of the things that the mentor told you were true to yourself and make them yours. And the reason for that is because, you know, that's how we progress. If we just copy what somebody else does, it gets us to a certain level, but then we stop there. You know, we're not going to progress. And so we need to find our own truths, not to sound all spiritual again, but we really need to go find all those things out that are true for ourselves. You know, the mentor said neck turning was important. Well, you probably need to try not neck turning, you know, in a tightly controlled test. If the mentor said neck tension was important, then we probably need to test that and find out if it is or isn't, you know. Charge weight precision, seating depth, barrel lengths, tuners, you can just go on. And I think you need to test those and prove those to yourselves. And every time you find some small incremental improvement, you just move your blueprint forward just a little bit further and a little bit further. While you're doing that, though, it'd probably be good to have some goals. Now you probably need to set some goals like high master, state, regional, maybe a top finish, you know, at a national event. So that way it fuels the work ethic. Otherwise, if you don't know why it is you're working for all that, you'll get burned out and you may not complete the end of that phase. You know, you'll just kind of get stuck there. I feel like I've been talking too much already on this thing.
No, I love it, man. I love it. I'm trying to stay quiet as long as I can because this is good stuff, and I know you kind of have a hard time talking about it. So if I don't say anything, you have no choice but to talk.
Yeah. Yeah, I think goal setting is important here for that second phase because it'll fuel your work ethic. And a lot of competitors, yeah, let me just break it down even further. So they got that first phase, just get out of your own gravity, copy, paste the mentor, give him your full devotion and attention, and don't stray from that recipe. Set your blueprint at the end of it. And now you have this phase 2 where you're going to experiment and test and find your own truth and develop your own system. And it's pretty important here to set some goals. At the end of this one, you probably should be a long-range high master already. But at this next one, you probably now can set goals like, hey, I want to set a club record. I want to be a club champion. I want to do well at a state, regional, high-level finish at a national. And that way you have those goals to fuel the work ethic, to do these testings, and so you can continue to progress and evolve your blueprint. Because as you do these experiments, some are going to fail, and you have to be able to have a fallback. So it's always good to just always have that reference line as you try something new to come back to it.
So I haven't told many people that I know of that you were my protege at some point, you know. And, you know, I'm glad that you were, right? Because you're being mega successful. So that looks good on me. But that's why I don't tell nobody that, because I obviously don't, you know, I'm sure I was not the only one you listened to. I know at first it was, but you put your own, just hard work. I mean, the reason I helped you so much is because I saw that you were working really hard, and it's easy to help somebody like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I smile about that because, you know, who doesn't respect and admire, you know, hard work? Somebody give me a compliment like that makes my day.
It is. Yeah, it's and you know, I saw that you were doing the work, but your second point, that at some point you have to just deviate. Obviously, once you had that success, you're like, okay, Eric told me up to this point. Let me see what else is out there. I'm going to challenge those things, right?
Yeah.
Believe the target, right?
Right. Yeah. Believe the target. Yeah.
So I remember you called me about the 300. And I said, nope, don't do it. Don't do it. And I'm glad you didn't listen because I was speaking from my own experience.
Sure.
I tried it. It was a great cartridge. I found it to be one of the easiest guns to tune ever, but it was really hard for me to shoot it consistently, right? Just because of how much torque there is. And I just had a tough time. And I tried it for a while, and I finally said, screw that, went back to the Shaheen and never looked back. So obviously you were having a lot of success and you asked about the 300. I said, don't do it. Don't do it. Well, you did it anyway. And I'm glad that you did. And I know you are too. But what was it like to jump onto the 300? Because did you have to relearn a lot of things?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yep. And that's where this phase two, I mean, some of it is like my story, but I've seen it with other shooters too. And some people will stay stuck in some of these different phases, and that's fine, because they're shooting for fun, and which is why we're out here anyway, right? I mean, we're supposed to be having fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. And in fact, I could see myself someday maybe not being so driven competitively and just shooting for fun.
Would you still shoot though?
Well, if you and Omar showed up, I'd have to try to shoot good, But
would you know who's who?
Yes. That's just a bad joke, I guess, But,
so.
Yeah, but the wisdom, it's definitely a learning curve. Yeah. And if you go back and look at the NRA scores, when you go back and look at my notes and the scores, my scores definitely went down. They went down for a bunch of reasons, I still say it takes 2 or 3, probably 3 barrels to really learn a significant change. And that could be a free bore. It could be that you're just actually improving a previous cartridge that you already had experience with, or in that case, it was a whole new deal with a new bullet and new brass and a new chambering altogether.
So you couldn't get it to work at first?
Well, I could get it to shoot small, but I couldn't shoot consistent with it.
That's where I was when I decided to abort.
Yep. Now, I was lucky. In the club, there was a gentleman named Doug Skogman that good friend of mine.
Win Zero.
Fonzie, as we call him, because he's always cool. He also started the 300 Wisdom at about the same time. And so now I had a collaborative partner. And once we learned to trust each other and got some of the walls and barriers down, because initially I didn't know Doug very well, and even when he first started the 300 Wisdom, so we kind of went and did our own little thing, and then at the end it's kind of funny. We come back and we're like, oh yeah, you have that problem too, and oh yeah, I have that problem too, and hey, look what I learned when I do this, and look what I learned when I do that. Like as an example, probably the first fundamental change that made me a better Wisdom shooter going from the 284 was just realizing you can't shoot the 300 Wisdom as fast as the smaller guns. You just can't.
You mean as fast as in shot after shot?
Yeah. Like at this year's Nationals, Peter Johns was to my right shooting the 7 PRC, and on that day I shot a 300 Wisdom, and at his 20th shot he was done, and I had 12 on. And I was trying to shoot fast. But initially you think that it's a gun, I reset the recoil and everything should work as fast. It just doesn't. I think if you end up rushing that gun. So that was the first thing to learn, was patience.
Right.
And just a different shooting approach and a different shooting style. Other shooters might be able to shoot the 300 Wisdom faster, but that, for me, that was the key, was
right. Slowing down.
Slow it down. And then I could be more consistent.
The analogy that I use about the 300 is, and I probably told you this when you called me about it, I told you, well, the thing about the 284s, the 7mm, the Shaheen, as you know, that's what I shoot, and you were shooting a similar cartridge, it's almost like dancing or playing a guitar and singing. You don't have to think about it. You just do, right?
Right.
Or dancing, you don't have to look at your toes and see you don't have to look at your feet, see what's going on. With a 300, you do. You have to look down on your feet to make sure you're getting your steps right, because you can't just dance.
Right.
It's you have to, every shot, you have to make sure you're on the same target, because sometimes it likes to bounce around onto other targets.
Right.
You have to make sure you bag. Sometimes it likes to walk. If you're not just perfectly, the recoil and it's mainly the torque. It's enough that it'll push your rear bag, and those are the issues that I had. Whereas the 284, you shoot, you push it forward, you put another round in there, you send it again. You know.
Yeah, it's a very forgiving platform, and it's very competitive. I mean, it's oftentimes it's probably the best cartridge to shoot in most of the matches. You know, whether a shooter's proficient at a WISM or not, it's probably the best cartridge because you can take advantage of the conditions and momentum of your previous shot and not lose the value of that your previous shot holds for you. Mm-hmm. You know, and so, yeah, I completely agree with you. That was the big shift, was just learning to be a little more patient and to shoot it slower. So it just took a different approach. And then, you know, it also took just a level of maturity, which is hard for me, to go, you know, to say, hey, man, your scores are going to suffer. You just need to shoot slower, and you're going to learn to shoot this, you know. And so I just developed a more deliberate strategy and style, and my scores did suffer initially, not just from the steering of the gun, but also because of wind and momentum of your previous shot. And, you know, but 2 or 3 barrels later, it started to, you know, my improvement, it started to improve. So
what made you stick around with it for that long, right? Because that was my thing. I think I tried it for 2 barrels, and I'm like, this thing is just not, you know, just not my cup of tea, because I couldn't shoot it fast. What made you stick with it?
Well, part of it was the success that Mr. John Myers had with it, especially at mid-range. And mid-range it's extremely competitive in terms of the precision capabilities of the rifle. And so I think Mr. Myers' stretch there is not only a testament to his abilities and obviously his knowledge and skills, but it's also to I know he probably also shot a 284 or something in there along the way, I'm sure. So it's not all just the
that's
caliber.
Where he started,
right?
284.
That was one indicator. Another was, at the time, Don Diffie was the long-range match director, and I took on tuning his rifles so that he would shoot at a match.
Okay.
Oftentimes he would just show up for the match and run the match and then not shoot as a competitor. And I was like, hey, you know, if you need someone to tune your rifle, I can get it tuned up, or I'll try to. I'll volunteer.
Right.
So I shot his SAUM. He had a SAUM 195, and he tried a 300 WISM barrel. And initially when I tuned the rifle, I'm like, holy cow, this is much easier to tune. It's much more forgiving. I'm like, this will be the cartridge for Mr. Diffie, because then it's easier for me to keep it in tune for him. And then his first mid-range match, he went out and shot really well with it. So that was another indicator. And then Doug Skogman was having really good results with it as well. So all 3 of those kind of said, hey, keep at it. Let's try it.
Well, you're doing well with it.
Yeah, it's a good cartridge. It's not magic like any of this stuff is, you know. I mean, it's got its strengths, but it's got its weaknesses too.
So what is your preferred components for that 300?
As far as like the powder and bullets and those kind of things,
Everything.
You want everything.
I want everything. Well, a lot of people are watching this and they're going, okay, yeah, you know, what, because as you know, all it takes is one little thing and it's not going to work, right? Possibly. Might just make it better. But, you know, I know a lot of people are wondering, well, what kind of brass does he shoot? What kind of powder? What kind of bullets, you know?
Yeah.
What kind of barrels?
Yeah, until recently, I had only shot normal brass. So, you know, for a shooter starting out, that's probably the known formula is probably normal brass. I don't have an experience with the other Winchester or any of the other brasses. I do have some experience with ADG. I shot ADG at brass at the TSRA this year, and it shot well. But yeah, my preferred, you know, probably be Norma or ADG brass. That's what I have experience with. I consider there's really 4 competitive powders for it. H4350, reloader 16, reloader 23. I guess I should say 5 powders, or 6 shortcut, or 31 just straight, and also triple nickel, the N55, the new N55 powder. All of those powders are that I've used all those and competed with all those powders, and it's a pretty forgiving cartridge in terms of components. I've shot the 200 hybrid, the 220X, and the 215 grain burger. I've also shot the 230 hybrid, but I mostly have shot the 200 hybrid and the 215 burger. And I've shot 9 and 9.5 and 10 twist barrels, Krieger, Brux, Bartline, and Hawk Hill in the 300 Wisdom. Those are the barrels. Probably my favorite barrels are probably Hawk Hill or Bartline barrels. Those have done me really, really well. And as far as powders, man, I don't really have, to say I have a favorite powder for the Wisdom, I let the barrel tell me what powder is its favorite, and then that becomes my favorite for that gun.
Of course. So you test all powders or just 2 or 3? What do you do?
I think over time I've learned that this brand barrel would kind of like prefer this powder, and this brand barrel will probably prefer that powder. But generally I will try to explore in the first couple hundred rounds of a barrel's life, find out what powders the barrel prefers. And there will normally be 1 or 2 powders that jump right out at you and will, in my experience, have saved me headaches and time after it's sped up in terms of redefining the load for that barrel.
I see. What about action scopes? So I guess you like March.
Oh yeah. I really like March after this year. That scope that I got to be part of the testing or evaluation of it was that's an amazing you've had a chance to look through one too,
yes.
And I haven't met anybody that's got a chance to look through it that hasn't been wowed by it.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
it's pretty good. I'll say.
Yeah.
I saw it in. I saw it.
Right. You can't say where.
Well,
undisclosed
I saw it
location.
And it was pretty good. Yeah. But yeah, it looks great. So March.
Yep.
That's what you're on right now.
Yeah, that's where that's kind of where I'm at now. I know your team's associated with the Collie scopes. I have 2 of those scopes. Those are excellent scopes. The mechanical repeatability and it's just it's an awesome, rugged, super reliable scope.
So if you had to new shooter that's listening that wants to build a 300, kind of give them the build sheet, kind of like when I gave you with a 284.
Right. Okay. Well, you're going to want the rifle to be. You don't want to build a 19 or 20 pound Wisdom. You're going to want that thing to be right at 21.25 to 21.5 pounds without rain gear, because you need all the weight.
Right.
I have shot. In fact, the 2019 mid range was off a sub mini or the Mini X. But I think myself, I've shot better scores with the Wisdom off of a heavier Neo or a Max type rest, a heavier rear bag. The smaller 5 pound rear bags, that's not going to do you any favors with the Wisdom. You need a heavier rear bag. Protector makes a good one, and they'll make you a custom size one. Right now, I use that Seb Bigfoot, his latest version, and I really like that rear bag. I use the Seb Neo, and looking forward to trying an X, to see how that works out. But I would tell them Seb Neo. As far as stocks, the Cirrus XR stock with the rail. I don't have that gun anymore. I kind of miss it. That's an excellent stock to build a Wisdom off of, as is the the Kestro stocks from Macmillan. Those are the two that I have experience with. You either need to put a rad on it, or you'll need a bigger recoil pad in terms of surface area to help distribute the recoil. If you go with a little thin, just the profile of the stock recoil pad, that's not doing yourself any favors. I think you need a wider, a bigger, thicker recoil pad and or a rad. I used BRMXDs initially with the WISM, and those extracted to an ejected round or a fired round, no problem. But a loaded round, you probably need the LXD because of the ejection port, you know. Bat M's, Nuvos, those are the actions that I have experience with that I could recommend. I think those are excellent actions. Norm, man, I think a lot of the way he shoots, he just got on the 300 Wisdom Nation train. He's shooting a Kelby Golden Bear, and he's shooting that really well. So that'd probably be another action to recommend on those barrels. You know, the Krieger, the Bartline, the Bruxes, and Sean Burkholder at Hawk Hill. He makes a good barrel too. That I've had good luck with the Wisdom. Those JGS Manson make good reamers. Speedy, Omar, Keith Wheel, Kenny Porter. Those would be all guys that I think could build a really, really good Wisdom chamber and a Wisdom barrel.
Yep. Pretty simple, right?
Well, yeah.
If you know the road,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
pretty easy to give directions, but the problem is when you're sitting there going, I don't even know which way is north.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
Now, again, keep in mind, the Wisdom takes a lot of work to get it to work. Correct?
Yeah, I would say it's probably going to take 2 or 3 barrels to really learn how to shoot it. And you probably need to just approach it from that standpoint and say, okay, you know, I'm starting something with something totally brand new. Wherever my current level of performance is probably going to go down. I'm probably going to not shoot as good as scores. But if you invest that time into it, and again, I would find another guy that's shooting a 300 Wisdom pretty good and see if you can't buy him some Berger 215s in exchange for some knowledge, you know, or something like that.
Yeah, there you go. You discussed earlier about turn versus no turn. Is your 300 no turn, or are you still turning necks?
I'm still turning necks. I still haven't concluded decisively for myself about turn or no turn. You know, our sport is like, the nationals this year, between first and like fourth, it was 4 or 5 points, you know, 2 points were between first and second. So it's like, how do you even test that? You know, it's like, how big a sample size do you need? I mean, it's so, but yeah, right now I still shoot I still have turn neck brass because that's where I'm at. But I think I'm going to move to a no turn neck reamer.
Because you're shooting the PRC, I call it the PRCW, but it's a 6.5 PRC necked up 7mm.
Yep.
That is a no turn that you're shooting, right?
It is. Yep.
And you shot a 600, 1,000 with that thing.
I did. Yep. That was an excellent barrel. That's an excellent barrel. That's an excellent chambering. I mean, there's so many ways to be competitive. There's so many different platforms now.
I just need one, man. I just need one.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, there's so many different ways, you know. It's like, oh yeah.
I think that in itself is what makes it hard, because people will be given a blueprint, kind of like you just did, okay? And somebody will say that, and somebody's going to say, you don't need that Norman brass. Winchester's just fine. And they're going to just make that one change.
Right.
And all of a sudden they can't get it to work, right?
Yep.
Because they're going to say, well, so-and-so shot Winchester brass and they did good. Well, yeah, but they may have had a whole different setup, right?
Yeah.
Different chamber, different whatever. And there's so many ways, but you have to pick the way and follow it all the way there.
Right.
Whereas I think where a lot of people make a mistake is they find out about the multiple ways, and they try to combine them, and I think that's where they fall apart.
Right. I mean, I agree. If you try to build a system based off conversations that you have on the firing line, and then something you overheard on the trailer to the pits, and then something you talked about to someone in the pits about, and then something you read online, and then something that you saw on Facebook, and then something you overheard at the next match, well, your results are probably going to be just like that. You know, you probably need to pick the mentor, do his system until you can beat and cover him, or you're at that level of performance. Then prove all this stuff to yourself and revise and reform your blueprint. Set those goals so that fuels the work ethic to get to the, you know, to test and find your own truth, as I say, you know, and then, you know, now you're at this point where you're like, okay, I've won a state, I've set a record, I'm doing pretty well. Now I really want to try to do really good at like worlds, or I want to win a national, or I want to win TSRA. How many times did you win that? 4 or 5 times?
4.
4 times.
I'm not done, so
Right.
get ready.
Okay. Exactly. So now I think then at that point you really have to. It'd be good if previously you were using Lenny Basham system, or I'm saying his name wrong.
Basham. Lanny
Basham's system. But if you haven't, you're probably held up by it now. You're probably not going to progress until you've used this system. I think past that. I think you'll find all the guys that are doing really, really well at the very, very top, whether they've read his book or not, they're using components of that system that he's put in.
Well, you have to. I say this over and over. I can teach anybody how to shoot in a year, but teaching somebody how to win takes a long time.
Yep.
Learning how to win is way harder than learning how to shoot. Would you agree with that?
Completely agree, Eric. And I want to bring up this experience that I had shooting next to Todd at Burger this year. So Todd was shooting really well all week, and I couldn't believe it. I found myself at the end of on the last day, I'm like, man, I have a chance at winning the Burger with Todd Hendrickson. And it came down to the last match, and Todd shot a 215 in crazy conditions. Crazy, you know? And he was just to the target to the left, really tough. And I remember going, man, how did he do that? Like, that was incredible shooting, you know? And I thought I was shooting pretty well, but that was just like superhuman. And I just was reading with winning in mind on the way over here, and it's one of the quotes I have highlighted in there. It says, sometimes when your best isn't enough, you have to find a way to win. And so I had highlighted that, but it didn't mean anything to me until I had shot next to Todd on that Burger. And then I'm like, man, Todd did it. You know, he as a competitor, he had found a way to develop his own mental competitive ability to grab another gear when he needed to, on demand, and make a win happen. And I thought, man, dude, that was a learning point for me, you know, I think, as a competitor. And I know we all probably have stories like that where we're at a match and we see, well, how did that guy just shoot that? Well, that he either got really lucky or he used the component out of Bassam's system there about sometimes we're going to need to be able to develop that ability to just shoot really, really well when we have to, you know.
The Danny Biggs, I want to say 2015-ish, when he set the national record. It was at 215 at the time. And he shot in the morning in Phoenix. Dead calm. He shoots at 215. And it was a national record, but, you know, some people were saying, yeah, but it was dead calm. And I'm saying, yeah, but he was the only one to shoot it, and nobody had ever done it before. So there's some merit to that, right? Then, of course, Ben Avery does what he does best, and the wind picks up, right? And that same day, I believe it was the same day, on the second or third match of the day, he does it again, in the wind now. And at that point, everybody's like, "Holy crap! This guy just elevated the entire game." And guess what? After he did that, then nowadays a 215 is, if you're not shooting 215s in the calm, you're kind of upset,
Right.
right? But he brought everybody else with him just because he set that bar. And at the time, like I said, nobody wanted it. I don't say nobody, but some people wouldn't give him full credit just because he was in the calm. And then he did it again in the wind.
Yeah.
And now everybody, just like you said, Todd shot it on the last day
Right.
at 215.
Norm seemed to have left quite a few of us behind with his 222.
Yeah, he's
you
kind
know,
of selfish like that.
You know.
Hey, man,
Yeah.
couldn't happen to a better guy.
I know. Yeah. Very humble about it. Yep.
So Todd grabs another gear, and obviously you appreciated what he did, but then you come back and you win the nationals. So you had to take something away from that, did you?
Yeah, I did. You know, probably the big thing to take away from was, I tried to have a really consistent, high level, competitive performance at every match that I was going to. Just try to be really consistent and really solid. And that was kind of the focus, which is still a good focus, but I wasn't able to do this Superman thing that Todd did, and I've seen other shooters do it. I mean, look at what Bill Kaloji's done at V2. Granted, Todd shows up with a good gun and Bill shows up with a good gun, but how do these guys do that? And I firmly believe that it's the mental game that separates those competitors at those competitions.
If you watch those matches that I put on, where you can see their whole body language and the way they act and the way they interact with, or the way they react to their shots on target, you can see the pressure building, or some deal with it better than others, and you can see the minute they start to kind of get a little frustrated, the scores, the shots, all of a sudden the gun starts to open up.
Sure. Yep.
It's a direct relationship.
That's interesting you say that, Yeah. And I hope I'm not leaving anybody out. You could literally go from like the first page of the Nationals list and just go down the names, Tracy Harold, Peter Johns, I don't even remember anybody further down the list. Just kidding. Norm. Yeah.
I'll remind you.
No, but all of the Lepore Brucks, all of Grizzly, all of these shooters, they're just amazing competitors that can turn it on demand, and have developed that ability to be champions like that. And that was probably the takeaway. It was like, well, Tim, if you want to be a champion, it means you have to beat other champions. And to beat other champions is like, okay, you have a good gun. Okay, you have good strategy. Okay, you think you know how to be consistent. Man, winning is like, that's a different thing. Especially at these tournaments like TSRA and Burger and Nationals and Lodi and these where the competition is just so keen. So,
what was it like? I remember the first time I was doing well and all these champions were around me and they were coming up to me and congratulating me. To me, that just added stress because, right? It's like all these people that I look up to, all of a sudden they're telling me how good I'm doing. Did that happen to you?
I look up to everybody. So when they come and congratulate me, yeah, I experience that all the time. It is awkward. This interview for me is awkward, and hopefully it doesn't show up on camera.
It's showing up.
So I'm afraid
I'm just trying to lighten the mood here.
No, I hear you.
It's great, man. What I've been hearing so far is amazing.
Yeah. All of that is, you look up and down the line. I think there was 106 F Open shooters this year. 120 or 130 in years past. That's definitely a vector we got to change, but enough on the squirrel moment on that. But yeah, whenever you have a field of competition like that and your name's at the top of the list, that's humbling. And yeah, it makes you realize, that with some hard work, little luck and opportunity, with using this system, getting started with a mentor. I mean, that somebody's the next national champion. It may be having his rifle built right now, and right now it might be a 2 or 3 year learning curve.
He or she may be watching this interview,
right,
and say, you know what, I want to do what that guy did.
Yeah,
and they might just take up the sport because of this. You just
right.
never know.
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of humbling to be in that spot. I mean, yeah, my first national was, the 2018 Raton National, where Norm won, and you scored the 222 for him. And
no, I didn't.
No, you were.
No, I was in the rain.
Okay.
Too. Well, I was shooting.
Yeah.
Not as good as him, but
yeah,
nobody was.
Nobody was, and still isn't. Dan Bramley, Norm, Jay Christofferson, and I had done pretty good as a master, and so I didn't understand how the squatting worked. Mm-hmm. And now I'm down at the left side of the range. I'm like, why'd they put me down here? Maybe they just want to put new shooters with experienced shooters. I didn't understand what it was about. But just milling around those things, that's the neat thing about our sport, is you can go to a national and you can mill with the very top end shooters, maybe are right with a very junior inexperienced shooter, and just watching those guys set up. And I remember, watching how deliberate Jay was with that. I remember, if I remember the 2018 ride, the strategy that Norm applied was, he was pretty picky on the condition that he shot, and I remember that, taking something away from that. But yeah, it was very humbling to be around, to hear that from all those people. The cool thing is I felt like maybe it was a testament to all the help that all those people had given me along the way too, because nobody gets here all by yourself.
Right.
We all pick up something from this great community along the way.
You talk about new shooters getting paired up with experienced shooters. Ted told us that he got paired up with you his first nationals.
Oh yeah, Ted. What a story, and that's got to be one of your favorite interviews you've done. That's an awesome interview.
He's one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
He's cool, man.
Yeah, he's not half bad as a person.
No.
Yeah.
No, but so he tells me that he talks about how cool it was to get paired up with Tim Vaught,
Oh yeah.
And that's what I mean. You don't know, you're somebody's hero, and you don't even know it sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what was it like?
Well, selfishly, I didn't know that Ted had a medical condition, so I'll full reveal this, and then people can laugh at me for it. But maybe it'll show a part of my character. I don't want everybody to know, but it's too funny not to tell. So initially, when I saw Ted show up, he had this box with these tubes that went to his nose, and when he laid down, I'm like, man, what's going on with this? Like, oh, it's probably so he can see the target better with O2. I'm like, man, that's some type of performance advantage. I mean, that's literally like where my mind went. I didn't understand that he would, that he had a.
You started looking on Amazon.
Yeah.
You put on your shopping cart.
Yeah, and then it was only later that I learned that he had the ailment that required the use of that so he could actually see the target. Yeah, Ted shot awesome in that. Man, I can't believe how quickly he's progressed, and how the high level competitor he is now. I mean, now that I get to know him a little bit, it makes complete sense. But still, what a rapid rise,
Yeah, he's come up really fast, and again, he's a hard worker, and he's got himself a pretty good mentor. Todd Hendricks.
Right.
And Todd, as you know, is an awesome competitor, and very, very giving in the sense of he shares his knowledge, and he shared it with Ted. And you see, and again, Ted is a freaking working machine. He just absorbs the good info and he puts it to use, and you see how good he's doing, right? But there's a lot of stories like that. Just like you guys taking Omar under your wing. You know?
Omar he was kind of stuck at the expert marksman level. And Yep. We got him off the 6.5 47, 21-inch barrel, 130 grain hybrids. We got him off that. And
Oh, he's gonna love this interview.
yeah, he's been shooting ever since. So
Yeah, good on you guys. Get Omar off that hump. No, but seriously, there's so many people that are, like okay, I'm gonna name names now. Like Brandon at the club.
Oh, Brandon's water.
I admire the guy because he just soaks everything up, man. In every match, he's just getting better and better. But I don't think he's ever left Bayou, so he doesn't realize how good he is. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, now I did see some indications of cockiness at the last match, so I'd say he might be getting an idea.
We might have to push him off the nest.
Okay, yeah. No, he signed up for burgers, so yeah, he'll be another Bayou shooter.
I'm gonna have to be politically correct here. Southwest National.
Excuse me, Southwest National. Yeah, yeah. He signed up for that. He'll be there. He'll do really well.
But
my guess.
Again, running with, I mean, he's running around with all of you guys in the sense of he's learning from you guys. I didn't know him from Adam when I shot there a few months ago, and we got paired up together doing a pair fire, right? And of course, I crushed him. But he was I didn't know how long he'd been doing it, but yeah, I crushed him pretty hard. I didn't crush him. I just shot my regular stuff, and he shot not very good. But after the fact, I sat with him and I explained, okay, this is that, look at that wind. And I gave him as many pointers as I could. And the next match, I think I beat him by an X. And I'm like, holy crap, this guy's a quick learner. Because immediately the very next month, I barely got him. And then the month after that, I think I got him by a point. And now this last match, he got me. And he got a lot of people. He's shooting super strong.
Yep.
But, I mean, that's the type of people that I enjoy watching their rise because they're so good they pick up on things so fast. And he's working at it because there's no way you just tell him and he's like, okay, the next time he applies it. He's got to be working hard, right?
Yeah. Neil Woody, Carl Matthews, and Doug Skogman have done a really good job of building in the last 6 to 8 months, building a system there at Bayou that's welcoming new shooters and builds talent rapidly. There's Rick Orick is another really good shooter at Bayou that's relatively new. Brandon, we just talked about. Mr. Mark Thomas, I believe. Mm-hmm. He'll be another quick learner.
They're the new Tims.
Yeah, I know.
At one point you were there, and all of a sudden, I'm thinking Bayou's going to become, how there's those schools where if you want your kid to play pro football, you're going to move to that town so that they can play at that school. I think that's Bayou Rifle Club. If you want to be a top shelf F-class shooter, you need to shoot at Bayou at least once or twice.
Yeah, and these other, the potential, and I know these other clubs are pumping it out too in terms of, I went to go shoot at Coalinga here a while back, and that was an eye-opening experience in terms of the draw that they have there from Arizona, Nevada, California, and the West Coast. The Rattlesnake Club, super challenging conditions, and then, of course, a lot of your team, that's their home range,
Mm-hmm.
And you see all the new talent being developed there. Camp Atterbury and Lodi has that central focus, with the Seabold and Dwayne Dragoo and the Kalaji crowd. It's a neat thing. It's good to see a club level sport producing this next generation of champions. I think that's probably the one of the more rewarding things about the whole sport.
Yeah, there's just so many people willing to help, and so many clubs. But I think, for example, Bayou. If a new guy shows up to Bayou Rifle Club, they're going to probably get intimidated by the scores, because the scores shot at Bayou are insane. Like there was Neil Woody just shot another 600 at 1,000 this weekend, right?
Yeah.
I think Johnny Ingram shot like a 596 or 97. And he was like 5th place.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought I shot pretty good, 597.40, and I think I was 4th place.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
It's incredible scores. When the conditions were very mild this last weekend, so the scores should be up there, but the precision potential that these guys are able to tune their guns to, it's a testament to, the knowledge that's being shared, and then the equipment, the bullets. Yeah, it's a neat thing to see. It's definitely raising the bar for all of us,
Yeah, but what I was saying is if you're a niche shooter and you show up to a club like that, don't be intimidated. Be thankful, because you're going to be learning from all these guys and all these shooters, and your game is going to elevate if you're willing to put in the work and stick with it, because that's where you want to be. That's the kind of club you want to belong to.
Right. I agree. Start off at a high level, end at a higher level, absolutely. Starting your journey already. Yeah. I can see where it'd be intimidating.
You've touched on team a couple of times. What has that been like?
Yep. I think that's part of that phase, like in phase 2, where you find your own blueprint, and now you feel like you're a real established shooter, and you've defined all these things that mean to you, and you've got your reamer, and you've got your system, you've got your bullet, you got your powders, and you've proven everything that works for you. Now the next level of learning, I think, is when you join a team, and that's probably about the time the team is looking at you and saying, hey, we want this guy to shoot on our team. And then having a team where you can build trust in one another, and everybody is oriented towards the same goals. Now some real collaboration can happen. And you realize that, when you go to the range by yourself, myself included, I'll have 3 or 4 things that I would like to test and find out. And oftentimes I don't get answers to those. I'll learn something else instead. Well, now with a team, or if you go with a teammate to the range, now those 3 or 4 things are now 8 or 10 things. And now you give back to your teammate. That raises his game. He raises yours. And this thing now, that's the next level of learning, I think, as far as shooter progression is the team part of it. Every single member of the team, except for Omar, has helped me. Every member of the team. So.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Homer's taking a beating, just like when we shot pool together.
Oh.
Anyway, so some of the key things, like, okay, tuners. Where are you on tuners?
Yeah, I think tuners work. I think tuners work. For sure. I do think Litz's evaluation of tuners was thorough and comprehensive. I do, and his brand, science of accuracy. I don't think there's really any disputing his testing methods, and the sample sizes used. I probably would have came to the same conclusions. You can look at the data that they have and go, well, those are the conclusions. That was the result of those tests. It's pretty extensive. I think for F class, though, specifically for F open, and this is, Keith Glasscock recently published a video where he doesn't, say he necessarily believes in tuners, and not everybody's going to agree on every single principle or point or whatever it might be. It doesn't mean that there's not value in that data or those conclusions either. This learning thing, how many times have we gone back and we've made a conclusion about something? For example, you recently published some data about primers, right? So up to that point, you had primers figured out. And then you tested stuff with primers, and now you're like, oh, wait, I have to relearn primers. So the same thing with tuners. I think for some people, if you're willing to invest those 2 or 3 barrels in that testing phase to find out if a tuner, you can make it work within your existing system, then great. And if you conclude otherwise after those 2 or 3 barrels, I mean, why would you put something on your gun that makes you shoot worse? You know, I mean, I think the key is to develop really good testing and you know, scientific methods to determine if that thing does actually improve your performance. I know with myself, it definitely improves my ability to be consistent.
So I'd buy you Sunday. Your first string, you dropped how many points? 3?
I did. I shot a 197, I think, with 10.
And then you turn your tuner.
I did.
And then you didn't drop a single point the rest of the day.
No. Now to make a scientific conclusion off that, you know, you'd look at all the other noise associated with it, and you'd say it doesn't mean anything, you know. But as a shooter, you know, the confidence you have in your gun and the way it's printing on the target and how responsive it is now to different wind holds and wind calls throughout the day, for myself, I can conclude right then and there that a tuner unequivocally helped me shoot better the rest of the day. Now, maybe the tuner should have been mounted here on my head and I just turn it and it's in my head, right? I don't know. All I know is when I moved it. Now, that the amount I moved it and the direction I moved it, it correlated with my previous results and testing and knowledge of that tuner. So that's kind of like another data point for me too, to go on that day.
Right.
So, yeah, the tuner thing, I can see where a new shooter, you know, say they want to start today, brand new 300 Wisdom, so on and so forth, and puts a tuner on the barrel, and after 300 rounds is just lost, right? Well, he's probably lost because he's not doing what the mentor told him to do with the tuner, and he's probably experimenting with it. And so then he makes a conclusion, hey, the thing shoots better if I just take it off. Well, it does in that case, you know, because you're probably not doing exactly what the mentor said to do with the tuner.
Yeah, or you probably don't know how to use it.
Right. So maybe initially, if a shooter wants to simplify it for himself and just say, hey, I just want to shoot without the tuner for the first couple barrels and then try it on later, that's fine too. I don't see anything wrong with that approach. There's nothing wrong with not shooting one either.
Right.
I mean,
a lot of people do.
yeah.
But you know, it's just one of those things. Obviously, I'm not gonna say anything about it just because I have a, you know,
Right.
I make tuners and I sell tuners, right? But I know you use them religiously, and that's why I want to get your take on it, because you've been using them for a long time. And you know, Sunday when I saw what I saw, you know, you shot a 197 and you're like, it's not quite right. You turn that tuner and then you shoot did you shoot back-to-back 215s?
Yeah, the gun shot 215s after that, and it was pretty flat, pretty responsive. And to try, I've never shot a 215 in match 3 at Bayou. It's very hard to do, but that was a cloudy, pretty calm day.
Yeah, well, you can't say that again.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, either way, the point is, whatever happened, and you know, it got better once you turned the tuner, right?
Right.
And you know, again, if you know, I have a million stories, but again, I don't think it's my place to tell them just because I make tuners, right? But you know, like you said, if it helps you, use it. If it doesn't, then don't use it.
Yeah. Kind of my phase with the tuner, my learning phase or progression with the tuner, I would still hold people like, you know, yourself and John Myers, like way up here with like actually understanding what it is they do. And
well, a lot of my knowledge came from John Myers. So let's just hold John Myers up there. And,
okay.
And I can just, you know, tag along.
Yeah, I'm more of a, like your brand, believe the target kind of tuner person. And so initially I tried a tuner because I traveled, I think it was to Capitan, New Mexico, and the gun didn't shoot so good. And I had already, you know, loaded the ammo. And so the only thing left for me to do was a seating depth. And I moved the seating depth significantly, but it still wasn't good enough to win. And so I'm like, I'm going to try a tuner. And initially with the tuner, just like we talked about with this progression, initially it was backwards. And then I'm like, I'm shooting worse with it and I don't understand it. And it took 2 or 3 barrels, and now I feel pretty comfortable with it. Now I absolutely will, you know, I don't want to compete on a barrel without a tuner now. Just simply for the ability to travel and have something to do with the gun if for whatever reason it's not shooting.
Well, I mean, just the Nationals, right? First place, which is you. You had a tuner. Tracy had a tuner. She was second place. Third place was PJ. He had a tuner. Fourth place was Norm. He had a tuner. Who was fifth? Whoever.
Right.
But I mean, just the top three had tuners, right? And anyway, I don't know what else to say on that. It's just another thing that, some people look at them like, oh, it's just another thing to go wrong. Well, no, but it's another thing to go right.
Yeah.
Make it. Maybe that's the last thing that you needed.
Well, there's so many good shooters that do really, really well with them without a tuner.
Right.
It's like I am not one to say that, a non-tuner barrel gun is always going to get beat by a tunered one. No way I'll ever say that. There's just so many. And I would not advocate that people, you can look, there's a lot of, how do I say this? We live in the information age. There's so much that's accessible. But there's also, I would really relabel it as the misinformation age. There's so much information out there and there's so much stuff that's being professed that maybe it's not intentionally a falsehood, but they don't necessarily have any business, professing that as the answer or the truth. I think you have to go out and test and find out for yourself. The tuner thing is like perfect example. I think there's a lot that can go wrong with a tuner. You can open up the muzzle of the gun; it cannot be secure. The thread couldn't be cut right. So mechanically, I mean, there's a lot of noise right there. How to learn how to use it in terms of its movement and increments and environmental change or bore condition. There's a learning curve there. So I think you could make all kinds of wrong conclusions about what a tuner can and can't do. And I may have maybe one of those. I just would say go out and test it, and then make a conclusion.
Leave the target.
Yeah, believe the target for sure.
Yeah. So that's all we're gonna say on tuners. So what's next? What's you talked about goal setting. What's I'm assuming your goal was to win the Nationals, right? You're there. What happens now?
Yeah.
Because Lanny Basham talks about the time that he won the Olympics as being the most depressing time in his life, the most depressing day in his life, because all of a sudden he had reached his goal and now he had nothing else. He reached this. So I'm asking you, what's your next goal?
To not come in sixth place at the next Bayou match. I mean,
you can lean at like a 599,
right? Yeah, I would like to, I would like to win the Southwest Nationals. I would like to have a winning performance there. After cheering the current U.S. team on, next year I would like to try out for the U.S. team and participate with the U.S. team. But probably the very first goal I have, those are kind of individual, selfish goals, is Team Roland Cole. We feel like, I feel like maybe we just caught third gear and they're shifting into fourth. I mean, I would really like to try to build the strength and depth of Team Roland Cole and really get our doctrine, tactics, and procedures and all that stuff just nailed down and really build a strong team. That's a very consistent team over time. And we'll be looked back at, historically and say, man, those guys were some really solid, good shooters,
Yeah, you guys are doing well. You guys are doing really good.
I'd like to get Omar, help him make High Master this year.
That would be nice.
That's another goal of mine.
Maybe he can use one of your rifles.
Yeah, that probably would help, so. I'm going to catch so much poop for that, man.
Well, I'm gonna be a little on his side, but if he shot relay 1 like you'd shoot all the time, he might.
That's true.
He might could get there faster.
That's true. Relay 1, it does help. It does help. Golly, man, I can't believe those guys got that in.
So anyway, rolling coal. You guys seem to hit a different gear lately, right? And just from what changes have you guys made from the time you guys were not winning to now that you're winning?
Well,
or have there been any changes made? I don't know.
Yeah, I would say the team, I'd have to go back and look at all the stats and things like that. The team, McMillan, was already a very successful and a very good team at the top level. And I mean so I felt like we were just the Rolling Coals kind of building off the success of that, and building off the momentum of that. Norm's done a good job of trying to build trust and collaboration within the team. As shooting, shooting's kind of like a season in life, maybe for some people. This is all. I mean, probably not for you, Eric. You're probably going to keep doing this for a long time with the business investment you have. But, for other shooters, it kind of ebbs and flows in terms of their fire. Maybe they're really devoted into it, and then seasonal life, either with children or work, or they have to move, and they don't have the same access to the range. Jobs change. I think the teams kind of go through that too. So Team Rolling Coal has absorbed a couple new members over the last 2 or 3 years, ever since Team McMillan. And so Norm's had, there's challenges whenever you bring new people together. And one of the first ones that Norm tried to address was trust and faith in one another for the team. And I think he's done a really good job with that. The collaboration within the team in terms of people sharing, not just fiddling with guns, but also, hey, I learned this with the wind today. I learned this with the Mirage today. I learned this with the Flag today. The team has done really well with that, I think. That I think those would probably be the 2 biggest changes. The trust the captains help build in the team, and the collaboration and the sharing within the team. So those I'd say were the biggest moves. I mean, your team's arguably, the most successful and dominant in our discipline over the last, recent history. I mean, certainly you probably agree that those are probably 2 fundamental tenets to a successful team. You have to have trust, and you have to
have a team.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's right. That's what a team is. And, you can have 4, 5 really good individual shooters, but that's all they're going to be, right? The minute something goes, everything's going to be great as long as they're shooting well. But the minute something goes wrong, the blame game starts, right? And that's really hard to not do, right? Because everybody wants to win. I know I do. Everybody does. But then you just have to build back better when you don't win, right?
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, you guys are doing a good job. Coaching, you guys kind of have a different strategy nowadays?
As far as win coach?
Mm-hmm.
So Keith Glasscock is the win coach for the team. At Berger this year at Berger,
Southwest Nationals.
Excuse me. At this year at Southwest Nationals, Keith had a medical illness that he had to go home early for. Mm-hmm. So Norm, I guess, mandatory promoted Omar and I to the win coach team, mm-hmm. and we work pretty well together. Omar's just a fantastic win coach on his own right, all on his own. And then due to work constraints, Keith didn't make the Nationals this year. I think new job, and then he also had some family medical issues.
So at Southwest, Keith couldn't coach.
Right.
Omar and you get moved up, or were you already coaching?
No, I was not. I was going to back coach Keith.
So you and Omar are coached.
Right.
So you guys, was that the first time you guys won?
Yes, I believe. Well,
That's Rolling Coal. I don't know.
I think the Desert Team match. Did we? No, I don't think you guys won that by a ways, didn't you? The Desert Team Challenge.
Yeah, if I remember correctly.
And then at Atterbury, I think we won the mid ranges team.
Okay.
The long
range.
We did not win it yet.
But you guys won Southwest.
Yeah.
So Omar gets put in as coach, and obviously he did. You and him. I mean, you had something to do with it. You guys just did great. You guys won.
Oh yeah, man, that was a good synergy that Omar and I had. He's a good coach on his own right. He didn't, just the way the cookie crumbled as far as me being a front coach, and we just work really well together. I mean, we shoot together quite a bit, and we see things almost in the same win picture, if you will, in terms of seeing philosophy and things like that. So,
and then you guys, same deal at Nationals. You and Omar coaching.
Now that was Omar and PJ.
Oh, okay.
PJ back coached him, and when PJ shot, Fonzie back coached Omar. So Doug Skogman did.
Yeah, but you guys won again.
Yeah, again, Omar coached an excellent match, and the members of the team brought some really good guns. I mean, just some of probably the best guns.
Yeah, we noticed.
Oh, I didn't mean it like that.
No, seriously, it was. They were great guns.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm gonna ask you a hard question now. What happens? What happens when Glasscock comes back?
Yeah,
because I mean, this is just a question, right? It's what happens now. I mean, you guys Omar's doing a killer job, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the way I look at it as a team, that's what we do as a team. Keith is the win coach. Mm-hmm. Keith couldn't make those matches, so the team stepped up. I mean, I don't feel comfortable. It's not something I want to seek out to be as the coach for Rolling Coal, mm-hmm. and Norm knows that, and Omar feels the same way in terms of Keith's our win coach. So I mean, those were what a team does. We had individual members step up to fill that void. Mm-hmm. And Keith's I think Keith's planning to coach us. I think Norm told me Keith's going to coach us for Southwest National mm-hmm. In the spring.
Good.
So yeah,
love to see him back. But I was just wondering, right? Just because of the, we're all looking from the outside in, going, all right, what's going to happen here? Because I mean, Omar's been doing really good,
right?
For a master,
for a master, I know.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I think he just shot his first clean at 600.
Wow.
I know he's doing really well.
But you guys had to lower it down to a 10-shot string, right?
On a slinger face
and sling target. That's
right.
good. Good job, Omar. No, seriously. Again, this is just me looking from the outside in, going,
sure.
Man, just
It'd be kind of like
just being nosy here, honestly, because
let's say
the minute Omar stepped up,
yeah,
and again, it may have been just coincidental, but
let's say Siebold couldn't make Southwest National in the spring. I mean, you or somebody in the team would step up to coach, and you'd have a new coaching staff, right? I mean,
yeah, and that's I kind of ask myself this, right? Because for example, I don't even know where to go with this without it sounding bad.
Oh.
But because let's say we change coaching staff, and all of a sudden there's win after win after win. Then you go, is this a new coaching staff or do we? You know what I'm saying? That's I find that a tough situation. That's why I asked the question. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's like, how do you remove somebody who's winning, who's killing it?
Yeah.
And again, it's just me wondering as a captain of a team, going, that's a tough situation. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, no, yeah, and it's one of two. I think you look at yourself, you're at a quandary of you don't have enough talent and your guns aren't good enough, so you work on that, or you're on this other side and you have enough depth and great guns, but then you have to work hard on the synergy and to keep that all together. And I think we're right now, Team Rolling Coal is fortunate to be in this camp. To have some really good guns, really good shooters, and a lot of depth and talent, and now now the challenge is to make sure that we work together harmoniously and synchronize all that and collaborate and get the most out of that talent, and to keep it together versus being over here, so I think that's a fortunate position to be. And your team is one. Almost Grizzlies, another team that's there. Not all the teams at the very, very high level. They're chock full of talent. So I think the captain's challenge with that is not good performance or winning performance. It's teamwork and synergy, and to keep the team working as an efficient machine. That's the challenge.
Yeah. Indeed. I mean, but anyway, you guys are killing it. You guys are doing well. So
yeah,
now you have a target on your back.
That's right.
You got it off our backs.
Yep.
It's a constant struggle. I don't know if struggle is the right word, but it's a constant. Trying to be at the top is hard. Staying there is the hard part.
Right.
It's because, like you said, there's so many good teams, and they just keep getting better.
Yep.
Like Rolling Coal, you guys have really stepped it up. Grizzly, Long Shots, and there's teams that we may not even know of yet that they might just show up next year and win. Right.
Yep.
You just need that right combination.
I think it's important to look at the number side of things. Is it 1,600 points for team? Would that be a perfect?
I believe so. Yeah.
So, I mean, this year it was only 1 point that I think separated the first and second team, and then the third place. I think Long Shots had more X's by a pile, and they were only a couple points behind. Mm-hmm. So the margins are like we're definitely proud of winning, and we're proud of that. But I mean to make some kind of definitive conclusion, on a race that's that tight, it would be like, man, I think we're just hoping to repeat a very consistent high level performance like that. And if our score is the top one at the end of the day, even better,
Yeah. Well, speaking from my point of view, just whatever you do, just get Omar off the coaching staff.
Right.
Because he's been hurting us.
Yeah. He is a hell of a win coach. He sees it. He definitely sees it.
Yeah, he's done well. You can't argue with that. And obviously you guys have really stepped it up, as a team. Norm's done a really good job with the team, and all of you guys are just on fire. So congrats on that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'm proud to be part of this. It's a good group. It's a great group of guys. So I'm proud of that.
There was a point in time when you were kind of in between teams, and you bailed on me one day. You want to talk about that? I want to talk about that.
Okay, let's talk about it.
So why don't you tell the story as good as you can remember it?
Well, yeah. You mean TSRA, Team Capstone?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't give you as much notice as I'd like, but about 2.5, I was struggling with my gun. Mm-hmm. I think it was a Wisdom too. And it was probably 2.5, 3 weeks prior to the match. My gun was not where it needed to be. I tried everything. I just was lost. I even fell back to the blueprint, and that didn't work.
The blueprint was wet.
Yeah, I was like, man, I'm stinking. I'm like, so instead of showing up with a bad gun, for team capstone, which at the time, still now, it's heavy hitters. I mean, it was you, Larry B. It was Steve Harp the year prior.
Steve Harp. And you.
Yeah.
You were the fourth member.
Right. And so I'm like, I can't let these guys down. And it was flawed. I look back on it now. It was a flawed conclusion to make, but Mike Wynn had just crushed the latest Bayou match, and he has been hammering. So I called Mike and said, Mike, are you planning on shooting team? And he's like, no, I'm not on a team. I said, well, my gun sucks. Would you shoot for Eric for team capstone? He says, you betcha. So I called you. I didn't get as positive reaction with that as I'd like, but it was the decision I made, and I'd probably do something different nowadays.
Well,
I just would have showed up with my bad gun and took my lumps and brought us down. But
well, it was. I understand what you did. I 100% did. I 100% do understand what you did, but at the same time, for me, it was just about shooting together, right? And I guess we both had different goals, right? It was just about shooting together, and you were trying to not be the guy that cost the win, and I didn't really care. We ended up winning by, I don't remember. I remember we won by enough margin that your gun wouldn't have mattered. Like, your gun would have had to be complete trash, which I know your expectations are so high that your gun probably wasn't as bad as you think it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I remember that led to, you were without a team for a while. And we discussed, right? Because you would call me up and I never asked you to be on Team Lepua. And I think that was a big reason. It was that time when you bailed, right? Because I'm like, I got to trust, you know what I mean? And
sure.
I know why you did it, but at the same time, I told you, I said, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You're going to end up on a great team. You're a great shooter. Just don't worry about it. And I think at the time you didn't see it.
Yeah. I think the phrase that I taught myself after that is there's one captain on the team. And I made a captain decision, and I'm not the captain, I'm just I'm a shooter, so it wasn't my role to make that decision. I should have just showed up with my bad gun and said, Eric, my gun sucks,
Well, we would have given you another one.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But the point is, I'm glad you ended up where you're at. I think you're doing really good. Your teammates are great. I think I'm happy where you ended up.
Yeah, it's funny how things just kind of it all settles out where it's supposed to settle out. That I probably would have done things differently. But I am super fortunate, and I feel very happy for the team I'm part of, and kind of the way it played out. That'll be part of my story now. So,
yeah, and it's a good one, man. Like I said, I know that I just wanted to air that out because I know that was kind of a rough time, a little bit of a patch. It was a lot rougher for you, I remember, after the fact, because you kind of regretted that decision. But, it is what it is, and you ended up on a great team, like I told you would, just because I knew you're a great shooter.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's really, man, we're not, at least for me, I'm not going to nail every decision and every match and every little branch in the road out of the park.
Nobody will.
I'm going to get a flat tire and mess it up, from time to time. So I just try to learn from it and move on and apply that to this team. And, I think the lesson learned there for any other shooter, myself included, there's one captain, and these guys, they can make the call. You don't have to, let them decide, if your gun ain't good enough or if it's the right one or not the right one. I probably shouldn't have taken myself out of contention there. So, but it was selfless at the time, but it seemed like the right thing to do.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're good. We're good. And, like I said, I just really wanted to shoot with you. And that's where, like I said, we had different goals, and it is what it is. Now you have a great team, and so do I, and we're all happy.
Yeah.
Happy family. And here we are trading stories now.
Right. Exactly.
So,
Exactly, man.
New shooter, they need to join a team.
Well, I think first they need to pick a mentor. Get that blueprint. Do everything he says. Make high master. Then that's the end of that phase. And then just go and reprove all that stuff the mentor told you and see if he was full of it or not. You need to prove it to yourself. And redefine your own blueprint. Set some goals so it fuels the work ethic. And then at the end of that, you're probably ready to join a team. You'll probably get to the point where you got your own blueprint and a team wants you. Now you're shooting on a team, collaborate, build within the team, build a great team. Now set those big goals, national, burger, regional, states, win. You want to win those. And now you're going to find you're limited unless you have the mental management game by Lanny Bassam. You have to develop those tools. And at the end, you'll get to be like David Christian and Bill Kaloji and, Dwayne Dragoo and on and on and on. And, Todd Hendricks and all these guys at the very, Norm Harold and Doug Skogman, all these guys at the very top, PJ, when they need to.
Tracy,
jeez.
Tracy's killing it.
When they need to, all of a sudden they shoot a clean with 15. And it's like, wow, how did they do that? And they may not even know they're using that system and the tenets of it, but they've developed that ability, So.
Yeah. Good stuff. All right. You get to nominate somebody now.
Peter Johns.
All right. Yeah. He's saying, I talked to him this morning.
Oh, awesome.
So.
Awesome.
Cool. Yeah. I think he'd be a good one. He's finally taking the game seriously because now he's an open shooter.
Yeah.
The joke there is that he used to be an FTR shooter.
Yeah, he's a very good FTR shooter too.
National champion.
And he's already, yeah.
Yeah. What did he get, third this year at nationals?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it was you,
third.
Tracy, and then PJ.
Yep,
so
he did.
He's already clawing at the national championship in North Open.
He got second at TSRA.
Yeah.
He shot a 640 as well.
Yeah.
Oh, quick story about, if I can, about PJ. So PJ 640, he's not going to brag on himself, but so I will. He's shooting out of a Nuvo action, and his first match he shoots a 212 or 13, but the target wasn't really coming together really well for him, and he wasn't that impressed with the gun, and he thought he was going to be able to manage it, but it wasn't going to shoot great. Well, he looked, and the roller cocking piece was bottoming out on the bottom of the cocking ramp of the bolt.
Okay.
And so he was having inconsistent ignition. He didn't discover that, though, until he couldn't get the bolt. It broke after the end of match 2. It literally broke. So the cocking piece, the wheel came off. So he didn't have a gun to shoot. He was clean 400 with 28 or 30, and he was clean. He didn't have a gun to shoot. I had not brought one of my Nuvos. I had brought a Borden that day, and nobody else had a bat roller cocking piece. So I gave him the keys to my place there in Pearland where I had, and I told him where one of my Nuvos was. He drove there between match 2 and match 3, which it's about 20 minutes away. Got the bolt, brought it back. The way the rules read, and his gun was shooting really good, you're not afforded a sighter. Oh, I'm sorry. He was halfway through that match, and that failure happened in match 3.
Wow.
So you're not afforded a sighter for an equipment failure.
Okay.
Like a failure to fire. So he put the new bolt in his gun without a sighter.
Wait. Just to make sure I understand it.
I told
Halfway
the story.
through the match.
The third match.
He's clean so far. He's on his way to a 600, but now his gun breaks.
50 shots clean.
50 shots. He's got 10 to go, and he's 50 clean. He runs. He gets off the line. You give him the keys. He runs over to your place, gets another bolt.
A bolt. Comes back. And one of the match directors was like, okay, hey, PJ, you're going to get a couple sighters. And I'm like, hey man, this guy could shoot a 600 for a club record. The way the NRA rules work, I don't think. So we looked it up in the book, and there's no sighter. So PJ's like, well, I'm going to do it without a sighter. He puts first round for record, 11 record is an
The 51st shot?
51st shot's an X. I mean, that guy, so he had a braking condition. He had a new bolt. I'm proud of my 640 or whatever, but that's on another level. So.
How did he have enough time to go get the bolt?
He drove really fast.
Those of you that say 30 minutes is too long.
Yeah. He drove, and PJ shoots fast anyway, so
Yeah.
he had shot really fast his first 10 shots. So I'll let him tell the story, but he probably won't brag on himself that much.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah.
That is very impressive. All right, Tim, thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, Eric.
Great. I feel like we only scratched the surface, honestly. There's going to be so many follow-up questions.
Did I do good enough to nominate a second person?
Oh, hell yeah.
Omar. I'd like to nominate Omar.
All right. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll have Omar.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have to have a contingency? Maybe he needs to make High Master first?
Maybe if he could if we could get him to shoot a clean at 1,000.
Either High Master or even in pool, if he can get to, if he can become a 4.
A 4?
On a league ranking. If you get a 4 or High Master,
Right.
he can be on.
Right. Something tells me the High Master is going to come first is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I've seen him do both, and he shoots guns a lot better than he shoots pool. Because I've crushed him a pool every time, and I haven't crushed him a shooting every time. So.
Jeez. What a burden. What a burden you have. So
when he watches this interview, he's going to be cussing both of you and me.
yeah.
All right, man. Thank you so much. And I'll see you on the line.
Thank you, Eric.
Take care.
See you, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.